Once upon a time, in a kingdom wrapped in deep winter, a queen sat sewing at a window framed in black ebony. She pricked her finger, and three bright drops of red fell on the snow. Gazing at them, she whispered,
If only I had a child with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as this ebony wood.
In time, her wish came true. A baby girl was born, pale as new snow, with dark hair and a little red mouth like a rosebud. They named her Snow White. But joy and sorrow often walk hand in hand. Not long after, the gentle queen grew weak, and one quiet day she closed her eyes and did not open them again. The king mourned and walked the stone halls with heavy steps, holding his daughter close and promising to love her enough for two. Seasons turned. Snow melted from the towers and green crept back across the hills. Snow White grew like a flower in spring, soft, bright, full of life. She shared bread with the kitchen boys and helped the maids with heavy pails. Servants smiled when she passed. In time, the king remarried. His new queen was breathtakingly beautiful, with eyes like polished glass and a smile that never quite reached them. She wore jewels like starlight, but her dearest treasure was a magic mirror, tall and bright and framed in gold. Every morning she asked,
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
for many years the mirror answered, "You, my queen." And the words were like honey to her proud heart. But Snow White blossomed into a maiden, her laughter ringing through the halls, her beauty gentle and radiant. One morning the queen asked again, and the mirror replied, "You are fair, it is true, my queen, but Snow White is 1,000 times fairer than you." Jealousy seized the queen. She sent for the royal huntsman and murmured,
Take Snow White into the deep forest. Do not let her return. Bring me proof that she is gone.
The huntsman bowed, trembling, and led Snow White beneath tall trees. She walked beside him, trusting, pointing out wildflowers and deer tracks, thanking him for the lovely outing until the castle was far behind. At last he stopped, hand on the knife at his belt. Snow White saw his torn face and fell to her knees. "Please," she whispered, "forgive me if I have done wrong. Spare my life. I will run far away and never trouble the castle again." The huntsman could not harm her. "Run," he said hoarsely. "Run, Snow White, and never come back." To save himself and deceive the queen, he killed a deer and carried back a piece of its meat wrapped in cloth. The queen accepted it with a satisfied smile, believing her rival gone forever. But Snow White was still in the woods. She ran through tangled branches and roots, frightened by every rustle, until she wept beneath a great old tree. When she lifted her head, she saw a tiny house tucked between hills and roots, with a crooked roof and small windows that glowed like curious eyes. Inside, everything was neat and small. 7 plates, 7 spoons, 7 mugs, 7 little chairs, and 7 narrow beds lined up side by side. Hungry and exhausted, she tasted a little from each place, whispered an apology to the empty room, then lay across the beds and fell asleep. At dusk, the owners returned, 7 dwarfs, home from working in the mountain. They stopped short at the sight of their disturbed supper and a strange girl sleeping on their beds. Snow White woke, and though she startled, Their eyes were kind. She told them of her mother's death, her father's new wife, the magic mirror, the queen's command, and the huntsman's mercy. The dwarfs listened and said, "Stay with us. Keep our house and cook our food, and you shall be safe here. But beware. Let no one in while we are away. Your stepmother will not give up easily," Snow White promised. So the days settled into a simple rhythm. The dwarfs to their work with tools and lanterns, Snow White to sweeping, cooking, and singing at the window, until evening brought them together again. Far away, the queen asked her mirror,
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
and the mirror answered, "You are fair. It is true, my queen. But Snow White, who lives with the 7 dwarfs in the forest, is 1,000 times fairer than you." She locked herself in a secret chamber and disguised herself as a bent old farmer's wife, with gray hair under a plain cap, a rough dress, a worn apron, and a basket of shining red apples. Among them lay one perfect apple, round and bright as a drop of sunset, but hidden inside was a dark enchantment. The farmer's wife walked to the cottage. Snow White was alone and kept the door bolted. "I must not let anyone in," she called.
Then don't, child, the old woman replied gently. Just take an apple. I will eat first.
She sliced the apple in two, bit from the pale inner side, and smiled. Nothing happened. Snow White collapsed, silent and still, as if the light inside her had been gently blown out. When the dwarfs came home, they found her on the floor, pale as winter, lips red as blood. They tried everything they knew, but she did not wake. They wept and at last said, "She is too beautiful to hide in the dark earth. We cannot bear to lose her completely." So they made a coffin of clear glass, trimmed with gold, and laid Snow White inside, her hands folded on her chest. In golden letters they wrote, "Snow White, daughter of a king." One day a young prince rode hunting through that forest. His dogs ran ahead, then whined and stopped at the hill. Between the trees the prince saw the shining coffin guarded by 7 sorrowful men. The prince lifted the lid and gave Snow White a soft, respectful kiss on her forehead. A warm hush seemed to pass through the air. Snow White drew a gentle breath, coughed once, and opened her eyes. Above her were green leaves and blue sky, and a young man's face bright with joy. Not long after, Snow White and the prince announced their wedding, and the 7 dwarfs were invited as honored guests. In the great hall, Snow White stood beside the prince, radiant in white and gold. When the queen saw her there, the color drained from her face, and she understood her cruelty had led to this moment, exposed before all. The guests stared. Guards took her by the arms, not roughly, but firmly, and led her away from the light. From that day forward, Snow White and her prince ruled with gentle hearts. The dwarfs often visited the castle. And if you ever wonder who is truly the fairest of them all, remember, it is the one whose heart is kind.